Hello, everyone, and welcome to Oxford Policy Pod, the students' podcast from the Blavatnik School of Government. My name is Ana Luisa, and together with Christian, we are delighted to welcome today's guest, Renato Godinho, a senior Brazilian diplomat and one of the key figures behind global efforts to tackle hunger and poverty. Renato currently serves as director of the support mechanism of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, based at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations headquarters in Rome. The alliance was launched during Brazil's 2024 G20 presidency as one of its main flagship initiatives, with the goal of mobilizing international cooperation and scale up proven policies to fight hunger and poverty worldwide. Renato is a career diplomat at the Brazil Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where he has served several important roles. These include serving as Brazil's alternate permanent representative to FAO, contributing to the reform of the UN Community on World Food Security, and heading the division for renewable energy at the ministry. Today, we'll discuss the global fight against hunger and poverty, the evolving architecture of multilateral cooperation, and what it really takes to translate international commitments into tangible improvements for the world's most vulnerable communities. Renato, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Anna and Christian. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Renato, thank you. We're moving on to the questions. So you had a long career in Brazilian diplomacy and international cooperation. Looking back, what was first that inspired you to pursue public service? This question is especially relevant because we are doing a public policy master here, and we are looking to be senior civil servants one day. So can you guide us on your path? How is your path?
Look, I wish I had a cute, inspiring story to tell. But actually, coming to think of it, I started my career working in the private sector as a journalist. No, so that's also my university degree training as an undergraduate. And the journalistic career appealed to me because of the idea of witnessing history unfolding, no? So and being able to uh, watch that and help tell the history unfolding through a good vantage point. It was my dad that was calling my attention to the public sphere and diplomacy and all. He was from the military, and he found it as a very nice thing to be a diplomat. And I was always dismissive of that. At some point, though, I thought, why not? So, and I went for the exam. I did relatively well. So, and I got involved to study for the next year's exam, and then I started going in. And I think for me, the diplomatic career also had that same appeal. No, so you're still able to witness history unfolding from a good vantage point. Of course, after that, I mean, many opportunities for engaging, for doing different things. I think I've been very lucky through the course of my career to being able to work on things that were interesting and driving to me.
Thank you, Renato. So now that you are one of the leaders of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, which brings together over 200 members, government and international organizations, NGOs, and financial institutions. Can you walk us through what actually the alliance does, and what are the main purposes, and what are the steps you did to establish this alliance against hunger and poverty? Thank you.
Well, yes, let's try to be brief with that, or else I could be here for hours talking about it.
We have time.
But but the alliance has currently 205 members, no? So the membership is the real strength behind the alliance. So first a small correction. No, I'm not a leader of the alliance. So I lead the support mechanism of the alliance, which
The
is the
main
small
technical.
team that has been established to help connect the dots. No, so when the alliance has a board of champions, co-led by ministers from Brazil and Spain, and there are several world leaders that were involved through the G20 process and beyond in establishing the alliance. So the real strength, the real capacity in the alliance are with the leaders, the members that are there, and they have to show this leadership going forward. And we hear modestly, it's a very competent but small team. It's just here to help connect these dots among the members, and that is the design. No? So the alliance was created with this mission to help the world meet SDG 1 and 2, other SDGs, but mainly focus on fighting poverty and hunger, which are the SDGs 1 and 2, but through two approaches. No, so first is keeping the political visibility high in the agenda of the need to fight hunger and poverty, which have no place this century. Uh, how can we deal with those kinds of challenges if we cannot solve this, which should be much easier than some other challenges that the world faces, climate change, uh, peace, those are really tricky. So if we cannot solve hunger and poverty, how can we have hope of solving those other uh, more complex challenges? So that's, I think, the push to go back to the basics and work on those who are falling behind. And the second objective is specifically one approach to try to do that through bringing aligned support to the countries uh, which are implementing large scale programs targeted at the poorest and the most vulnerable. Um, that's on evidence for the best practices, the best implementations of these policies, these programs that worked. Uh, so it's about enabling the countries to be able to do that themselves, because the actors, the countries and the governments are the only ones that can do that at scale and sustain this. No, so for many, for decades, I mean, some of the problems that were generally acknowledged in international development cooperation is the fragmentation and the way that many of the development cooperation services were doing things circumventing the governments or doing things for them. But at the end of the day, the project budget ended, and whatever the activity was didn't get traction and didn't continue. No, so uh, this is one of the findings that inspired the alliance, its launch and its design.
Yeah, I think you were very modest in a couple of points here. First off, starting with your own history. And I guess a lot of the audience that will be hearing the podcast doesn't know how hard it is to get into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Brazil and how hard it is the exam. So that's inspiring in itself. And then I think on the second point on the leadership on your team on the support mechanism, we learned this quite a lot here at school about the actual implementation. I guess it's much easier to get this political momentum to get to the agreement when everyone has, like, for instance, we had a G20, so this political movement drawing people into this subject, but then to be able to keep on the momentum and implementing what is it the commitment that we first initially proposed to do. So it's one of, and at least from my perspective, one of the most important parts of the job. So well done to you and to your team. Moving on with the questions, I would like to bring a little bit the spotlight into the Brazilian leadership on coming up with this alliance. So the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty was one of the flagship initiatives of the Brazil G20 presidency. What motivated Brazil to place hunger and poverty at the center of the G20 agenda at that particular moment?
Yeah. Well, I think to start, Brazil at the time and still had a leader, no, President Lula, who knew hunger, who knew poverty in his life, and the fight against hunger and poverty uh, defined his not completely, of course. There are many other aspects, but is a strong theme, no, behind his career, his political career and fight. So it was only natural that pairing this with the world moment. So we had a pandemic, which basically interrupted some positive trends that the world was seeing in the diminishing of food insecurity around the world and reducing of extreme poverty. So there were decades of progress. Of course, hit and miss sometimes and slower than anyone wanted, but still there was a trend of consistent progress that the pandemic interrupted. And even a few years after the pandemic ended, the recovery was not happening. So we were not seeing these trends recovering, and everyone generally recognized that everyone in the field, in the industry, that things were not going back to normal and something different needed to be done. So I think uh, it was this pairing of the right leadership in the right political context that motivated this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like launching this initiative, an additional initiative, global initiative at the G20 is something that I imagine that requires a lot of political capital and coalition building. So, what were the main diplomatic challenges that Brazil faced in getting this initiative off the ground from your perspective?
Well, you'd be surprised maybe to know that we were a bit surprised at the time. No, so now I'm working as the director of the support mechanism. But back in the 2024 in the G20, um, I have with a good colleague and friend, Saulo Seolin, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil. No, we were co-chairing at the technical level a task force that was set up for negotiating and establishing the alliance. Uh, and you would be surprised at the level of welcome that we got from the G20. So, from the start, from the first technical notes that we had drafted and sent to the countries, I think there was even a big welcome and a relief that someone would finally prioritize this. So there was a lot of goodwill, which doesn't mean it was easy, no, because when you get to the nitty-gritty details, it can no, there can be lots of small differences that needed to be worked out. So there was a very efficient group of institutions in Brazil that got together to push this forward in a very coordinated way, different ministries, and at the same time, I mean, this very positive energy and goodwill from the G20 delegation. So sometimes there are divisive topics or elements, and in the case of the alliance constitution, lots of, I mean, constructive arguing and fine tuning the documents, the governance, but all the time with a disposition of everyone to make it work. So we relied on that, and actually, all the founding documents I have the printed book with the founding documents approved by the G20. They were all approved in July, and
Wow.
the G20 process started in December, no, the previous year with the first
Okay,
note. And we still
interesting.
had almost half a year until the summit in November to go from the negotiation mode to the implementation mode. So when the alliance was launched, it already went beyond the G20. We had time to get, and this was also required a lot of efforts and diplomatic efforts from the whole Brazilian network. But to get 148 members, countries, institutions having joined, endorsed the statements of commitment that were approved in the G20, but they chose to endorse it, even coming from the G20. So the alliance, when was born, it was not of the G20 anymore. No, so the G20 was its birth certificate, but it doesn't depend on the G20 and the cycles of the presidencies to work. It has a separate governance, and because all of that was already completed and written in these founding documents, this is what allowed it to work.
Yeah, that's very impressive, and it really did
Yes.
surprise me. Like you've mentioned a couple of other global issues that we are facing, and it's so hard to get consensus around that. So it's good to hear that the G20 at least sees tackling hunger and poverty as one of like an agenda that everyone shares the same values.
There might
So
have
you
been a little bit of luck, no, and the moment
okay?
again. So at the moment, there was consensus that more action was needed on that front. So it was 2024.
Mhm.
Yes.
One cannot say for sure that if the same initiative was attempted today, that it would work. So the world has become much more divided than it was at the time.
So a little bit the perfect timing
And that's only 2 years.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is my last question regarding Brazilian leadership. You mentioned the President Lula's particular background of having seen and witnessing poverty on his own life, and our historical leadership on hunger has really strong symbolic weight. And given the country's own journey from widespread food insecurity to major reductions in hunger, how important was that historical experience in giving Brazil credibility when proposing the alliance? So how did you bring Lula's personal background plus the wins we've been having and getting out of food poverty a couple of times also in the past when proposing the alliance?
Yes, and you're very right to point that out. And I think it was really important for the credibility of the proposal and of the approach that was taken. No, so not by coincidence, the co-chair of the board of champions, which is the main governing body of the alliance. No, it's being co-chaired by Brazil and Spain currently, and the co-chair is the Minister Wellington Diaz from the social development assistance and fight against hunger of Brazil, and Minister Diaz leads and coordinates a body of ministries that across many domains coordinates large scale programs that have links to each other and that together have worked to quickly draw Brazil out of the hunger map, which was a key proposal in this administration's plan. And it succeeded even earlier than intended, than planned. Uh, so this experience with these large scale programs inspired the design of the alliance, which is based on the concept of a policy basket of tried experiences in international initiatives and coalitions. Sometimes we see debates regarding topics, no, or frameworks that it's difficult to land into concrete practice. And the policy basket lands these, so we could talk about nutrition or resilience or all these topics or food security itself, but what are you talking about? So what are the interventions? So and the policy basket lends that into let's do a targeted cash transfer program or a poverty graduation program or a school meals program. These are the kinds of instruments that Brazil has a lot of experience with, other countries as well, and the alliance is based around that.
Mhm.
Brilliant,
Interesting.
thank you.
Yeah, so building on this, Renato, so the support mechanism that you are leading, its main objective is supporting national programs in developing countries that reduce hunger and poverty. However, there is a history in international bodies that a lot of programs in this international organization, they don't survive direct contact when they go into local realities there. So how do you avoid this trap of building programs that look good in Rome or Geneva or New York, but they don't work so well in countries that they're supposed to help the most?
This is a big challenge, I think, for everyone, the international initiatives and organizations. And I think this is a key differentiator, no, for the alliance. Because, well, I just alluded to it, no? So it is not working on the level of, for instance, broad cross-cutting strategies or frameworks. It's trying to land on support to specific, well scoped programs that are large scale. So it's also on the other end of the spectrum, it's avoiding little projects that can do beautiful things for three villages or a province and stay there. No, so it has to be tied to a large scale, maybe nationwide, even if targeted program that the government owns and drives. Uh, and it's all demand driven. So the in the process of the alliance, it is the governments being members that request us the support mechanism for helping finding the appropriate framing and the partnerships for the implementation that they want to do. Uh, so this has been actually it's still very early in the process. So I'm only not even 2 months. I think today it's my second complete month as full-time director of the mechanism, and the full team has been in place only now recently. But last year from Brazil, there were a lot of volunteers, part-time officers that got together to already work on these things before the full team was established. And the experience that we got, the most positive feedback is from the countries, the ministries, which were saying that this process empowered them to go and plan and design the things that they wanted to do in their programs. So even before concretely finding the knowledge partnerships or the financial partnerships that they will need to fully carry them out. So empowering them and coming with a structured process that they would engage with. But all the material, the propositions, the technical aspects of the program are of the countries. No, so we are not doing these things for them. Again, we don't have the capacity for that. We are not experts in domain experts. We are experts in connecting the countries to those who are the experts. So the challenging part, I would say, is less the work with the countries, but how to connect all of this process, which is very new, no, to what the other members can offer, no, because all of them and the international community have been used by decades to work with their own processes, their own ways of budgeting, or programming or providing support through different approaches and making them all align in favor of this country program, even if it's a very good program, it's very hard. So that's the challenge we are right now. So the alignment problem, which is compounded by the current world context, of course.
Mhm.
Yes. Now I have a little bit of a tricky question, if I can put it that way. So the Alliance mandate is to help end hunger and poverty by 2030, a target that by most projections, and especially when we look at the current geopolitical context, the world is not where nowhere close meeting. So given that, is the 2030 framing genuinely useful, or does it set the alliance up to be judged a failure before it's had time to prove itself?
That could be a risk, but I'm not frankly worried about it. No, so when we design and launch an initiative, no one likes permanent things. So you have to have an horizon of action to plan for, and the general horizon that everyone has, and it ties to its mission, are the SDGs. So now their current thinking around the UN, nothing to do with the alliance, on what comes next and what to do when the world realizes that most of the SDGs won't be met, most likely. So I hope that this is reversed, but this is what the trends point to. So there's this broader debate, and I believe depending on how the work of the alliance goes, it should be judged, its successes and failures and shortcomings, also viewing the world context and what it has been able to accomplish at the time. So I would think that just like with the SDGs, a little bit before 2030, the major stakeholders and leaders will have to reflect on these points and decide whether to extend, to change, or to move on to another approach, another model. We'll have to see, but I think that decision will come in time.
Very interesting.
Yeah, everything you've shared has been very encouraging. So you're
Okay,
batting on
yes.
that.
Yeah, so going to a more pessimistic question, I would say. Not, you touched a little bit that in 2024, which was just 2 years ago, the world was not as polarized as it is now. So you are operating in a moment of rising nationalism, shrinking aid budget, and deepening fractures in this multilateral landscape. So how does the alliance build your connections with country in this environment, and how can you thrive in this environment? And we can see that there is a lot of tension in the world, a lot of conflicts. So how can the alliance achieve its purposes in such a fluid environment, if I can say so?
Yeah, Christian, there is no ready answer for that. You are right. So the alliance was designed and launched with a certain world in mind, and the world
Yes.
suddenly changed shortly after. So it was a lot about defragmenting and better channeling international development cooperation. And now there is much less international development cooperation to defragment. Um, so it has becoming more challenging. And but one thing that we we know and we have been saying is that precisely because of this context, the potential value of the alliance process is even higher, because when there are less resources around, it is even more urgent to pair them. No, so I think those that are saying that development cooperation should move on from doing things that the recipient countries should have been doing themselves. Well, the alliance is about creating the conditions for the countries to do these programs themselves. No, so uh, it's not easy for every country to have the technical capacity and the financial means to do that from the outset. But maybe if resources are combined, we can push some of them over the brink to be able to do that, to be enabled and encouraged. And once they see the results, that the returns to the economy, that the uplifting the poorest brings, no, this might snowball positively, but there is no guarantee of success at all. I cannot give you any guarantee. The alliance doesn't depend on the support mechanism. We can do what we can, but it's about what the members are willing to do and unwilling to do together. This is the real question, no? So for this new environment, we are still testing how far things can be done together under this approach. But I mean, even if the success is partial, no, so we would have been piloting an approach that can be taken up later.
It can be replicated, right? So we're heading towards the last part of our conversation, unfortunately, and I really would like for us to end this in a higher note.
Mhm.
So I'm going to give you a very open question here. Looking ahead, what would success for the alliance look like in 5 to 10 years' time, and how we will know practically whether the initiative has made an actual difference.
Yeah. So the alliance, as I said before, it has two objectives and approaches. No, one of them is very broad. It's keeping the political momentum high and the visibility. And I think so far it has been quite successful on that, leveraging several occasions like the G20, the COP presidency, and has been keeping this action high. And this motivates countries. No, so now we also want to look for positive stories of what the members are doing in several fields in relation to the areas that we call the policy basket in school feeding, in social protection, in water access, in creating jobs for the poor. And there are many actions that all our members are carrying, not necessarily super coordinated, but even them, I mean, that's the political drive working. And we can find ways to assess and I'm not saying fully monitor everything, but have a sense on how that is going. And the second is this very concentrated approach that we can do for a number of countries who approach us and request the support to implement their programs. No? So when there is a methodology for that that we are perfecting now, that we have a full team and are putting in place with these countries for implementing these programs. And we need to give it a few years and see how that fructifies. No, the idea is to have come out of each one of these processes with clear implementation roadmaps. So, and signed off by the implementing government and by the partners on the role of each in implementation. So one can come with certain technical assistance, the other with financial support, all kinds of different cooperations. So we'll see, and I think if we have some good results, the hardest part is the beginning. The more we can find solutions and eliminate roadblocks, maybe the following tranche of programs will be easier.
Yeah.
Very
Thank you.
encouraging.
Yeah.
Thank you, Renato. So here comes our last question and very traditional one, which we ask all our guests. Is there a book that you recently read and you want to recommend to our audiences here at Oxford and abroad? Maybe a book that inspired you,
Or a podcast,
yeah, or a movie.
a movie.
Well, I'm a fan of the socialprotection.org podcast.
Okay,
So
Okay.
since
that's
you
interesting.
mentioned podcasts, that is very, very close to the Alliance mandate. And they are terrific. Socialprotection.org. Um, I might be interested because there is a knowledge partnership with them for carrying forward some of the activities related to the policy basket. But I would encourage every one of you who has an interest in these topics to see what they have. In terms of books, also keeping to the subject, and also in the alliance, we want to be look very broadly at many diverse experiences and there are experiences not only looking at Brazil or in the West or those experiences that we are more accustomed to, but looking to the East, to India, to China for their experiences, which is massive in uplifting people from poverty. So I was reading and recommend a perspective that sometimes might be very different from the traditional social protection view by the Chinese leader, no, Xi Jinping, from before he was even the leader of China, which is called Up and Out of Poverty, no, and it reflects a bit of the Chinese experience in they do not see so favorably providing people with assistance, direct assistance or grants. There are these programs, but just in a few cases, no, when it's about disabled people and so on. But they do have targeted programs to get into the rural neighborhoods, look at the situation of that specific neighborhood, and design interventions that can transfer capital assets to poor people, like giving villager a little installation with hands to be a hand creator, so a single mother can have an income without having to leave her kids alone. So by doing these things in her home, no. So there are interesting experiences that I think we should look at all the range of solutions, and these solutions about creating more opportunities and jobs for the poor that have more immediate economic returns in a time of constrained national budgets as well is being more and more looked at. So I think we need also to look at these experiences from all times.
Yes. So
Great
Renato,
suggestions.
yeah, this is a very good suggestion, Satsu. We'll definitely look at the podcast and the book. Thank you for that. So, but to end this very nice podcast, thank you, Renato, for this thoughtful conversation. Your insights on hunger and international aid and the future of how we interact between countries and how we can help end hunger and poverty are quite optimistic. To everyone here, thank you for watching Oxford Policy Pod. Uh, let's thank our guest Renato and see you at the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Muito obrigada, Renato.
Muito
Thanks,
obrigado.
everyone.
Thank you. It was a
Ciao,
pleasure.
ciao.
Thank you a lot.